promise to the consumers. Let me, it was an interesting afternoon, and I see a lot of almost sleepy faces in spite of the stern warning given here. So let me start with a musical note. I love this song. The film came in 1963, and the song tells us, not only to the corporates, but also to the consumers and for day-to-day life, it lays down the morality of how we should lead our life. Let's start with that song, if it plays. Okay.
निभाना पड़ेगा रोके जमाना चाहे रोके खुदा तुमको आना पड़ेगा जो वादा किया वो निभाना पड़ेगा.
Well, sorry you got off that beautiful song, and it basically says, so benefit of any kind of trying to explain, it basically says that whatever you promise, you cannot deliver. Okay, it's in a different context, but I think if you forget the context, I think it's absolutely relevant for all of us. Whatever we promise, we will deliver, whether it is in corporate life, to the consumers, or in day-to-day life. But do we really deliver, and how do we deliver? That's the context in which we are talking about. We talk about consumer being a king. What are the characteristics of a king? He has in his disposal a lot of weapons. He can punish anyone who disobeys his order, and his whims and fancies are fulfilled by everyone around him. The only difference between the king and the consumer is that in FMCG parlance, mostly she is a queen, and she has all the weapons in her disposal. Every single corporate falls over themselves to fulfill her wishes. If I don't fulfill her wishes, my friends out there would fulfill better. So I'm always threatened, and therefore I take care of my consumer. Competition does funny things to corporates and actually makes them work really hard. Brands and corporates are absolutely taking care of consumers in many ways. Simply because if she's not happy, she can cause very, very grievous injury to the corporates and the brands. Of course, we are not talking about one person, single person here. We are talking about a collective set of people here. The battlefield also is very, very favorable to the consumer. A number of consumer forums, including the CAI, which is celebrating the 10th year this year, which is enabling this movement of consumer activation. Number of sites are there, number of forums are there. I just wanted to show you one forum, which might illustrate what I'm trying to explain.
Getting new things is Getting new things is always a pleasure. You feel like a boss when the salesman talks to you about the product and a big brand name. And why not? After all, customer is king. Yes, you are king till he sells you the product. Then the same products become a horror in your life. You call the customer service numbers, all you hear is, all our customer service executives are busy, blah, blah, blah. Your call is important to us. But for how long? Is there an end to this? Just use Ekosha, India's most effective consumer platform, to get your complaints resolved. Log on to www.ekosha.com and just file your complaint in 2 minutes, or call our team of experts. And sit back and relax. Our team of experts takes up your complaint with senior officials of the company and keeps you updated via mail on the progress of your complaint. If that doesn't work.
So the video goes blah blah blah, explains how to log in, how to really go and talk to the corporate which is not listening to you. So there are a lot of weapons really out there which are enabling the consumer today to really take care of her needs and get her every single whims and fancies fulfilled. If the product that she has bought is not working, if the product is defective, She has all the access in the world to go and talk to the corporates today, and the corporates are also willing to do that today. Are there examples? There are very nice examples that Mr. Sudhanshu quoted. Are there examples in India of the consumer mind? There are examples, very, very well-known examples. One example, all of us remember is the Cadbury worm incident. Cadbury shipped something like 30 million pieces a month, and 3 or 4 pieces of the loved chocolates had worm in it. What did it cost? A furore. It caught the imagination of the consumer activist group, and yes, I mean there was a problem, but Cadbury being Cadbury turned the problem into an opportunity, ensured that they came back after the incident much stronger. They listened, they didn't brush it away, and they made their packaging much stronger. There are case studies in terms of how did they go about doing it, and so on and so on. There is also the Pepsi and Coke pesticide incident, which all of us very well know. So Queen takes on, and when the Queen takes on, corporates really tremble. There are a lot of consumer complaints that we as corporate also have heard. I'm talking specifically about customer care examples. Several years ago, when one of consumers, hair color consumers, called up and said that no, I've been using this hair color brand of yours for some time, but when I used this time, I didn't get any color. So we were horrified, stunned. We ran, and then we found that the consumer was right, and she didn't have any color. But that triggered the entire process in terms of why did it happen. R&D guys went there, marketing guys went there, understood in terms of what really was the problem, understood, and when we came back with a lot of similar stocks in the market, and we came back with a lot better idea in terms of how to prevent such a problem from occurring. There are similar incidents which have happened to us after that also, here and there. They're not perfect. But every consumer call like that wakes us up and shows us that there is some lapse is still existing in the system which needs to be corrected. So how do we go about addressing the consumer complaints? What is the process that we have? First, the psychology. The first thing that when we receive the consumer complaint comes, the first thing that we tell ourselves is, no, my product cannot be that bad. Something must be wrong out there. This is not mine. But what we tell our groups time after time is don't ever deny it. Because when God calls, you cannot deny. And consumer is not just the queen, but she is God out there. So take it very, very seriously. Get people to talk to the consumer, figure out, get complete details of the problem. That's the first thing that we tell ourselves. That's the first thing that we train people on. Reach the consumer within 24 hours. This is like giving first aid to the person who has had an accident. And in this case, the accident has happened to us. The product is ours. And if we don't reach the consumer within 24 hours, the consumer will forget. You would not even know what the facts of the cases are. You would not understand what the background is, what the context is, and we will never be able to address if there is a systemic issue. So the protocol that we use is we need to absolutely reach the consumer within 24 hours. There is a sales team there. The consumer is kept in focus. We are not there to talk and explain the situation away. We are there to understand from our point of view as to what has happened so that we can prevent it in the future. Where did she buy? What was the experience? What really happened? All that is understood. We are there to understand, replace, and reassure. That's it. That's a system. And once we understand from the consumer as to what really happened, once we replace the product and reassure the consumer that, yeah, we will look into it, and therefore the problem is understood internally, we start attacking the problem. We start with tracing of the batch code of the product. We go to the root of the problem in terms of where did this come from. Is it a manufacturing issue? Is it a shelving issue? Get samples from the market, get R&D to act on it immediately. Trace the origin of the problem and get a crisis management cross-functional team to attack, drop everything and attack the problem. That's the flow of events which happen within the company. And so that we can turn this opportunity, this issue into an opportunity to improve the entire quality system. The presentation should actually end here, if this was the real problem. If consumer complaint, receiving the consumer complaint was the real problem, I should say thank you and leave. But in our mind, this is not the real problem. When a consumer calls and complains, that is symptomatic of a larger problem. So before I explain what the larger problem is, let me explain in quick steps what FMCG is and how we function. You must be knowing all this, but let me go back to the basics. We understand what consumers want, get a product which can give the benefit, communicate the brand promise to her, make it available to her, and let her experience that promise. These are the 4 simple steps by which we build a brand, and that's what the FMCG cycle is. In the entire cycle, the promise is very, very important. What we promise and how we deliver the promise and how we communicate the promise to her. And the nature of promise is changing. You see increasingly quantified promises. Brands talking about 150% better than other brands, 99% problem resolution, and so on and so forth. Benefit is getting sharply defined more and more. And in the process, consumer is also getting educated in terms of how to evaluate products, how to compare products, and so on. And communication also tells consumer how it works and why should one believe it, and it explains in very, very much detail. I will give an example of one of our brands, Indica 10 Minutes, which is a colorant brand. It talks about the entire process of coloring taking just 10 minutes of waiting time. I'll just show you the video.
Prakash, நீங்க Indica 10 minute herbal hair color try பண்ணிருக்கீங்க. உங்களோட கருத்து என்ன?
10 நிமிஷத்துக்குள்ள நான் கலர் பண்ணிக்க முடியும் ஹேர். அது மட்டும் இல்லாம ஒரு 100% வெள்ளையை மறைக்கும். என்ன எடுத்துக்கலாம், நான் ஷூட்டிங்ல இருப்பேன், ஒரு ஊர்ல இருப்பேன், கேரவான்லயோ ஏதோ ஒரு லொகேஷன்லயோ 10 மினிட்ஸ்ல 100% வெள்ளை முடிய கவர் பண்ணும் அந்த 10 நிமிஷத்துல. சீக்கிரமா தடவ முடியும், ரொம்ப நாள் நீடிக்கும். நெல்லிக்காய், மருதாணி போன்ற ஹெர்பல் ப்ராடக்ட்ஸும் இதுல இருக்கிறதுனால இதை யூஸ் பண்றது சேஃப். எனி பிளேஸ், எனி டைம், 10 minutes, நான் ரெடி.
So when a communication like this goes out to the consumer evaluates and the evaluation becomes much easier. It has to deliver. If it doesn't deliver, the product is dead, and in the process the corporate is also. So with more promises like that, more products like that, it becomes very, very important for corporates to ensure that the delivery is absolutely on the dot and the promise is also absolutely on the dot. Consumer should get the benefit exactly the way it is promised to her, and nothing less than that. Empty promises cannot hold for a long time. So what is the real problem? The real problem is, as Sudhanshu pointed out, that not many consumers really complain. Especially when it comes to FMCG products where the investment from the consumer is not great. I pay 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 100 rupees for a product, and I'm not going to really go after complaining if it doesn't work. I have many more important things to do in my life. So we don't even get to hear the complaints, even if the consumer has suffered, but in the process she will punish us by skipping on to another brand, by changing her loyalty to another brand. And that is a bigger punishment that we go through. And that is the real problem that we go through. One doesn't even know the real consumer problem until it is too late, if you are not proactive, if you don't understand and continuously listen to the consumers. By the time you figure out that there is a consumer problem, consumer has long gone, and you're left with a brand which has a shrinking market share, and we start wondering as to what the next steps are. So prevention is much better than cure. To that extent, there is a quality journey that the corporates put in place to communicate. We go to preventive mode. We do a number of steps, including things like taking batches from market randomly, checking quality, so that even before the consumer complaints come home, you understand where there is a problem happening. And there is a complete process put in place for that. You take batch after batch, different markets, and ensure that you understand how the quality is till the expiry date, whether the product functionality, product delivery is good up to the delivery point in terms of expiry date. Do this periodically, build up a knowledge base, and use the R&D systems, R&D department that we have, and the quality systems. We check all key points where problems might happen to consumer, pain points might occur to consumer. That really is the system that helps us. So what I'm talking about is two strategies here. One strategy is when the consumer starts complaining, what to do, how do we go about attacking that. But before that, even to prevent that, how do we continue to listen to the consumers so that the consumer complaints don't happen in the first place. So on reflecting, corporates do deliver on their promises to the consumers simply because otherwise the punishment will be very, very severe. Thank you for listening.
I won't name him. I'll talk to him later. And I know who the second one was, but I have to say, actually, it was pretty good. There were only two people that I spotted whose eyes were just drooping a little. So well done, and thank you for listening to fascinating speakers. And we'll return to obviously some of the themes that they've introduced in a few minutes. But I want to abuse the chairman's privilege by taking a couple of minutes of your time so that I too, like one or two people this morning, say a few words about CAI. And I'll begin by telling you why I'm here, because you're thinking, why on earth is a Brit doing here in Chennai? After all, you know, this is the Consumers Association of India, not of the UK. But I used to work for the Consumers Association in the UK. I was there for more than 25 years. And I still today do quite a bit of consumer advocacy work. I still work a lot on electrical safety standards for consumers. And as you can see from the back there, I mentioned one of the things that I do. And it was at least 10 years ago when I first met Mr. Desikan. I was working for the UK Consumer Organisation in London, and somebody said, we have another foreign visitor. We used to get a lot of foreign visitors who would come to us because we were a very established organisation, and they would come to us asking for help and advice. And we had so many of these people come from all over the world. We in the end, we used to say no to every single one. And then this little guy turned up, and it was my turn to politely say, well, do just sit there and listen very politely, and then a cup of coffee and then a cup of tea, show them the door. But here I am, 10, 11, 12 years later, because this man caught me, and he will recognise this, because I called him, Mr. Desikan, a dog with a bone. You know, when a dog gets a bone, it can't let it go, can it? It whirs away. Then the next, it wakes up in the morning, it goes and finds its bone, and that's Mr. Desikan. Yeah, he told me 10, 11, 12 years ago, I'm going to create a consumer organisation in India. And I'm thinking, yeah, heard that, yeah, you're not the first Indian to come to the UK and say what you're going to do. But I know this guy, I've known this guy for 10 years now, he doesn't let go. And I can't speak for him, but you know, I stand here looking at you this afternoon thinking, if someone had told us that 10, 11 years ago that we would have been here today looking at you like, we would have wet our trousers. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, dog with a bone. But, of course, CAI isn't about one person. It's a movement. And what I have seen over the years is a huge dedication, mainly given by people who have volunteered their time. No one's paid them to be here doing this role and giving their time and their expertise and their experience and their wisdom and their energy. And I suspect at times they probably put their hands in their pocket and count some money as well. So, you know, I think it's important that those people are paid a tribute as well. And because I've been working with Concert recently, again, a tribute to the team in Concert, who, in my expert experience and opinion, are doing a quite remarkably excellent job. So, a tribute to you, all of you who have worked and do work and support CAI, and also because I know at the end of the day, everything costs money. Well, not everything, but most things cost money, and CAI wouldn't be able to achieve everything that it does achieve unless there is support from government, what the constantly doing, support from some of the other funding organisations, the international funding organisations that support this activity. So that was my indulgence, thank you. And I could use some of that soup, couldn't I? You know, I've got 10 minutes. Actually, we could do it up here. See if it really does work in 10 minutes. But just a couple of thoughts of myself, really, about this theme about whether the corporates deliver that promise on fast-moving consumer goods. My view is it's a balancing act. You see, as we have heard, apparently the consumer is king, queen, or something between the two. Transvestite or something, I don't know. And of course, I mean, it's true, isn't it, that they do need to sustain that partnership with consumers. And of course, if that trust, if the consumer's trust is lost, as we have heard, and we could figure it out, common sense, the consumer will desert them. But there's a no too. You see, at the end of the day, who does pull the strings in these big companies? Is it the consumer, or is it the shareholders? When push comes to shove, you know, who wins? But so my guess is the reality. We've heard the sales pitch, but the reality is that it is a balancing act that exists within these corporate bodies. But we can obviously discuss this in a few minutes. So what drives the corporate centre to deliver this promise? And we've heard, and I think there's some truth, of course, is that it is a truly competitive market that does deliver quality, because it drives quality, because each of you guys wants to win. And at the same time as driving up quality, it drives down price. And I think certainly from the European consumer market, the evidence is overwhelming that strong competition has delivered exactly these two benefits to consumers. Better quality products at a far, far lower price than it was when I was much younger. But I think there's another force as well. That is that the market still needs to be policed. Some of these big corporates, yes, of course, they police their products very carefully, I think. And of course we would expect, wouldn't we, that our governments, your government, my government, governments the world over, would be the custodians of, shall we say, consumer risk. Well, big risks I'm talking about malpractice or seriously dangerous products. That government will always be there to step in first to actually ensure those sorts of things don't happen. But of course they do. But I would put to you that one of the strongest forces in the marketplace, and certainly I think one of the reasons why the European market has such high quality and such low prices, is because of the strength and the pressure and the work done by consumer organisations. So I leave you with this passing thought from me, just for these few minutes, that consumer organisations, CAI is one, not the only one, but CAI is certainly one, have an important role to play to actually make sure that in this fast-moving part of the market, that corporates do deliver what they promise, and that they continue to deliver what they promise to consumers. I think it's one that both of our speakers can perhaps take, and I'll read it to you. It says, you may get complaints through call centres. How do you get queries and feedback suggestions about the products, and what is the process?
Let me take this first. As I had explained in our example, So what happens is if there are queries, then they get routed into, can you hear that? Can you hear me? Yeah, so if you get queries, they get routed to the right set of people. Both suggestions and queries are routed to the right set of, there is this concept of mining it, so basically it's stored, and at periodic intervals, these intervals vary from a month to 3 months, depending on the product category and size of the brand, that all the suggestions and queries which have come go to the relevant set of people, and then they are mined, and some of them are then taken on forward. In the past, this used to happen in reams and reams of paper, but fortunately today it happens with technology where there is a report which gets generated and saying what is the maximum number of suggestions which have come for something, and that helps you to work on it.
He explained, there are queries which come in, and more these days queries come in terms of sites, the Covid Care site to us, or us email, or us even as SMS. So most of these queries are electronically tabled, sorted, and given to R&D as well as quality department to start with, and marketing colleagues also share that. So we have a process by which we look at in terms of are these complaints, or these suggestions, or these queries in terms of trying to understand the product or the usage even more, and try to address that immediately. If there are suggestions, they can be acted upon in one way. If there are complaints, they have to be acted upon immediately. And as we have a 24-hour norm, we get out to the field, talk to the consumer to get more facts. If there are queries in terms of how to use a product, or there are understanding or usage on the product, we try to address that directly to the consumers. That's how we go about it.
Thank you. We have an interesting question here that in some ways is often inspired by the topic that we discussed just before lunch this morning. And of course this morning we were talking about consumer protection law, and we were hearing mainly from the lawyer's perspective, mainly the consumer lawyer's perspective. But we have a question here which asks the question about the consumer protection law, but looks for an answer from the other side of the fence. It says, what changes do you think the consumer protection law should undergo? And again, I offer that question to both of our two panelists here. Okay, I'll repeat that. What changes, if any, do you think the consumer protection law should undergo?
Consumer protection, as you were explaining very beautifully, is all about ensuring that the consumer gets a fair treatment at the end of the day. If there is any problem that she has come across in terms of using the product or defective product, she should be getting a redressal immediately. There's no point getting a redressal after long the problem has gone and she has gone through the torture of the whole thing. So if there is any change that we need to bring into it, it is about the speedy addressal of the whole problem. If that can happen, the faster the problem can be addressed, it will be better both for the consumer as well as the corporate, because more often than not, as I was pointing out, corporates may also not get to know that this problem could be systemic in nature and they could take steps to address that.
It's due to the lack of awareness among the citizens. Basically, there is no such programs like giving awareness to public through media or in other way. So that's the main reason, which I feel. And this can be addressed by setting up small consumer association organization in various dealerships. They can set up a shop, and they can, whenever the customer goes to purchase some items, they can give awareness, like what are the rights they hold, what kind of protection they have, and how they can utilize this Consumer Association of India. And such kind of information might bring more awareness among the public. So I think this will address this issue.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on that topic? Yes, we have one down here.
I am Dr. Singarai. I would like to just react to two things. First one you can say is a passive attitude. even if you bring it to the notice of the manufacturer's concern, nothing is going to happen. First. Second one, they have already brought to the notice of the persons concerned, no action was taken, so it's a result. The third one, you can say, there is no organized opposition. These are the three observations I would like to make.
I would say there are three specific reasons as to why consumers do not feel happy about bringing these to the attention. One is, of course, the lack of awareness among the consumers in general about the fact that they can go about and make a complaint and get a quick redressal on it. Number two, the quickness of communication, which probably some of the more advanced countries are able to have. Well, it has not yet reached the real very corners of the country, and therefore they are not able to quickly communicate and quickly get an answer. Number three, there is a latent fear among the people that those who complain are always being hunted out. And so they would not like to be in the quote, hunted out category of people.
Thank you for that. We have somebody else for that.
I would, lay great emphasis on the third point Dr. Raman has mentioned. See, the consumer does not have a direct connection to the manufacturer. Most of the products that we are talking about are available through retail dealers. When you go to a retail shop and complain about it, the kind of offhandish kind of a response, and especially if it is a lady, the kind of the kind of reaction the shopkeeper has is very distressing. She is almost made to feel ashamed that she ever raised a question. If the manufacturers can make sure that they can be reached very easily, whatever they want to complain and all that, these numbers and these things are so unreadable in the smallest type that is available. You don't get it, really, not many people are able to read it. There is no direct connection. And the dealer, definitely, especially women, the shopkeeper talks to them in a very shabby manner. They don't want to feel ashamed in front of the other people.
Then I'd just make a comment on that. When I was a child, my mother shopped in a store called Marks and Spencer's. It's a very famous UK brand. And one of the reasons why my mother, we were quite poor, my mother shopped there was because they had a brilliant reputation for handling complaints. That they would always take something back to exchange it, or indeed, said you have your money come back, unlike most other shopkeepers. And they were absolutely ahead of the game in the way in which they treated consumers. But as a consequence of them treating consumers that way, they had a huge consumer loyalty. And I would, there are no shopkeepers here, I guess, but I would certainly recommend, as we maybe heard from our two speakers today, that those companies who, unlike the shopkeepers just described, go out of their way to welcome complaints and welcome interchanges and feedback from consumers, in the end will be the ones who will win in the marketplace. But there are some...
Sir, I just wanted to add just 2 points to this. See, I feel that as you were saying, the sensitization of the consumer is definitely an issue here. So the general public, sensitization of consumer awareness is definitely lacking. That is one reason for sure. But also the complaints depends on the intensity of the problem that the consumer undergoes. Suppose I have used a cream and it is doing a harm to my skin, then I would rather view it as a serious problem, and then I may think of complaining. So how much is the intensity of the problem you are facing also may trigger one's desire to go and complain and raise a question. That is one issue I feel. Another issue is the price of the product. If it is, if I am not paying much for a product, I will feel saltaha attitude. It's okay, why should I bother not spending my time and energy on a product on which I have not spent much. But if at the same time the product is a costly one, I may feel it is worth pursuing the case further.
Period should be fixed MR period. Not 10 to 20 rupees or up to 20 rupees, that should be fixed MR, that should be in a bold letter.
Let me share something interesting in this area. I have done some research in this area. It was very interesting because 60% of the people, dissatisfied customers whom I have interviewed, I told that they have complained. So 60% of the customers who have been dissatisfied with some product or service have complained to somebody. So whom they have complained is the issue. Not many have gone to the manufacturers. Not many have gone to the original service providers. So they have gone to some intermediaries. So they do complain, but whom do they complain is the issue.
That's an interesting point. Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I am P.V. Manjunath from Betapura, Karnataka. Indians do not complain mainly because they have no time. They are much busy with their personal work than to complain. That is the main cause. That is why they don't complain.
Thank you for that.
Confederation of Automobiles Consumer. The Indian consumers, the less number of complaints because of lengthy legal procedure and lack of legal knowledge and the illiteracy in rural areas. Consumer forums are at the district level only. Because of density of population and less number of voluntary consumer organizations and less number of consumer forums.